Welcome to another edition of the 007 Files. I'm Bill Koenig, along with my co-hosts Javi Trujillo and David Leigh. And today we have a returning guest. It is Neil S. Bulk, soundtrack producer. And we talked to him very early in 2025 about James Bond soundtracks he has produced for La La Land Records. And talking to him again today because another one is out, 60th anniversary of Thunderball, 2 CD set. And Neil, most people are familiar, but if you want to do a quick introduction for yourself.
I was prepared for every question except for that one. Hello, my name is Neil, and I produce soundtrack albums for a living, which is a very odd thing to say. But I've been doing it for a number of years now, 15 or so, I don't know, 16. And somehow I wound up getting involved with James Bond soundtracks, which I'm delighted with.
Which we're very grateful for.
Yeah, I like them too.
The Thunderball new production was announced on September 1st. We're recording this in the second half of September, and people have already been getting their copies, including our own Javi here, but all over my Facebook feed have been full of people taking pictures of their soundtrack having just arrived. Neil, I wanted to begin with, how long did this particular one go? I mean, we were chatting before the recording. Your work was well underway at the time of our previous episode, but you couldn't talk about it. So,
absolutely. Thunderball has been in production for a while. So as I mentioned in our pre-interview, I started on Thunderball about 2 years ago. It was October 2023. I was in the middle of Live and Let Die and Octopussy, and I was just feeling motivated to look into Thunderball. I've had the files for a while. I've backed up Lucas Kendall's hard drive. Lucas produced an expanded Thunderball in 2003. And I had backed up his drives, and he wanted me to have a copy of the Bond project that he had worked on. So I had them all. That's what led also to me getting to work very quickly on Live and Let Die, and ultimately also on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which came out this year. But in the case of Thunderball, one afternoon, I just sat down and just quickly cut it apart, saw it was there. I didn't do like the final polish or anything on it, but it was just like, oh, this could potentially be an album, and I know how we can do this. There was a lot of material that wasn't in great shape, that needed restoration, which Chris Malone did a fantastic job on. You can't tell what was damaged anymore. So this one's been in production for a while. Also, when we did the License to Kill interview, I was neck deep on Her Majesty's Secret Service as well. So that was all going on as well.
Could I just ask a question at this point? And what's the biggest challenge for you in bringing older recordings, especially something as complex as the Bond soundtracks, up to modern listening standards?
Well, the key thing is getting the best transfer done. And that's kind of like building a house. What they say, your house is only as good as your foundation. So in our case, the foundation is the original tape, which was expertly recorded. In this case, it was Eric Tomlinson, who was the recording engineer. It was a terrific engineer. And the tapes were archived beautifully, for the most part. They're not all there, which is a problem. But what is there was stored very well and transferred very well. So they already sounded good. So if you already have a good sounding tape transfer, you're already halfway there. Then you just have to do your edits and work with the right people and get it going. And in this case, I was working with Chris Malone. I've worked with Mike Mattisino on some of these James Bonds. Doug Schwartz is the mastering engineer, who has a terrific ear and terrific taste and knows how to bring out the best in these recordings. And that's really what it comes down to. But it was already a fine recording. And you could listen to, like the 2003 Thunderball and go, yeah, this sounds really good. And it's like, yeah, well, ours sounds really good too. It's because it's, from the same tapes. But it's just finding the best element will get you there.
Well, and you said that it took, almost 2 years from when you started working on it to the release. Like, how did that, and obviously you're working on other things concurrently, but like, how did this production time compare to like your production on other Bond titles? Was this a similar production, or did it take more because there are different elements involved?
No, it didn't take, like I said, I started 2 years ago. or almost 2 years ago, but I wasn't working on it nonstop because for a good chunk of that time, it wasn't a project. It wasn't like a paid, actual project. But once we did, Moonraker and Golden Gun for anniversaries and Goldfinger, I was like, hey, Thunderball has an anniversary next year. Let's pursue that. And again, since I'd already done the research, I knew it would be possible. I knew what we had. I knew it would be, this great 2-disc release. And so when did that start? I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
I mean, I could look through some of my emails maybe, but it was probably, it must have been before Moonraker came out because yeah. So it was actually pretty cool. So I had all the material that I had all this material, but as I was working on it, I reached out to MGM and said, hey, what else is available on the Thunderball? Because I didn't necessarily have everything on Thunderball. Like I didn't have that Mr. Kiss Kiss, the mono Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang recording. I didn't have that anywhere. So I reached out to MGM, as I usually do, and say, hey, what's available? And they got back to me and they said, hey, good news. Thunderball is being restored in 4K right now. All the audio's been pulled. Do you want it? I was like, yes!
That's awesome.
So suddenly I got this huge download of material, and much of it duplicated exactly what I had already done. But then there were additional things I didn't have. And that's where I found the alternate instrumental of Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in stereo. It's where I found the Thunderball instrumental in stereo. We had the stem, so we were able to get those 2 short cues that were not archived anywhere. So it was fantastic, and so I what an opportunity. I don't think that's ever happened, and I think I even reached out and was like, geez, I've never had this happen before where my project is running concurrently with like a big project. And so it was fortuitous.
Real quick, I just want to give a recap for the uninitiated. The original Thunderball soundtrack, came out as on vinyl, 1 disc, 12 tracks, I think. But the problem was, Thunderball was racing to meet a Christmas release, and United Artists, which had its own record label at the time, wanted to get its Thunderball album in the stores for Christmas as well. And so roughly music from the first half's in it, but very little from the second half. Then in, I think it was 1992, there was a 2-disc CD came out. The first disc was like all the title songs of the first 16 movies, or the music or instrumentals that played on the titles. And then the second disc was a lot of stuff that had not been published before, and including a lot of Thunderball stuff. And then Neil mentioned the 2003 Lucas Kendall project. So it's had a kind of odd history. People know there's more, they want more. Bond fans anyway. Neil, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think Thunderball ranks in the James Bond music hierarchy? In other words, how important is it?
Oh, well, it's one of my favorites. That's how important it is. I don't know what value I can bring to that. It's all a matter of taste, isn't it?
Right.
But for me, Thunderball was always a very exciting score, and I think part of it was because it was the one that sort of had extra stuff available. Like we had that 21-minute suite on that 1992 CD, and we could cut that apart and put it in sequence the album to have an even longer Thunderball. Isn't that cool? And that also had the 2 vocal Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bangs, which we'd never had before. We can include those as sort of bonus stuff on our own custom CD. Isn't that cool? So it's always been fun from this sort of like cobble together my own album aspect, which the other ones didn't really have, but until they started to get expanded. So that always had an appeal, and I've always loved the music, but I don't necessarily know how or if I'd want to rank it with compared to other things, because I just don't. It's just not what I do.
Well, one thing about Thunderball strikes me is if you listen to Goldfinger and then you listen to Thunderball and then you listen to You Only Live Twice, same composer, but very different sounds for each one, which is, I say that as a compliment to John Barry's versatility.
And certainly You Only Live Twice is really a departure. Goldfinger and Thunderball, I think, have a little bit more in common. The big jazzy sound where he goes a little bit more romantic with You Only Live Twice. But, Thunderball and Goldfinger are a little bit more brash. But like Peking Duck is different from Russian Caviar, but I love them both.
There is a note in the liner about other Kiss Kiss Bang Bangs that were covered, notably Anne Margaret, Glenda Granger, and Buddy Greco. And I, like literally a week before, getting the CD, I was making a post on Instagram about our Thunderball coverage. And I found that Anne Margaret one. I'm like, I never knew this was a thing. So I went to iTunes and downloaded it and listened. Have you heard the other cover versions? And what do you think of them? If so?
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah. I liked the Anne Margaret one. It was different. It was cool to hear her particular flavor of it and how it changes the dynamic. But I was surprised that there were other covers out there.
Yeah, it was. I guess it was going to be a thing, and they tried to make it a thing, and it wasn't. Ultimately, it's not in the movie. I mean, the song proper is not in the movie. It shows up in like 2 or 3 cues in the film, but it's and obviously it was on the soundtrack album as well. So what was interesting is that I guess those cover versions, people could finally actually hear the lyrics, because if you only had the Thunderball soundtrack album, you only had the instrumental, and you wouldn't know why was this called Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. But if you were a ravenous music collector and you got the Anne Margaret, you go, aha, there it is. Or maybe if they published the lyrics somewhere, I don't know.
Was there ever any consideration to have that Thunderball suite on this release, or is it just there was no space?
Why?
I guess maybe for a completionist's sake.
No,
I guess.
all the music from the suite is on here, and in fact, the suite shortened the very ending of Bon Meets Domino, which we restored for the very first time on here. No, that was never any consideration on that. It doesn't make sense.
One question I have is, on the original soundtrack, there's 007, and
yes.
It's a fairly short version of it. But if you watch the movie, it's part of a longer piece of music. It's worked into that longer piece of music during the underwater fight sequence. Is there anything you can add to, what happened with that? I guess Absolutely. They wanted to have it on the original, but... Well,
again, as you pointed out, they wanted the album for the release, but they didn't have much of the score recorded. So there are 2 cuts on the album, the instrumental of Thunderball and the 007 cue, which were recorded specifically for the album. They were not meant for picture. They were strictly album recordings. And in fact, those, certainly Thunderball, and I think 007, again, this was a few months ago, so you'll have to forgive me, I think those in 3-track stereo were among the material that I got from MGM that I didn't have before. I was like, oh my gosh, we've got the instrumental Thunderball in the best quality it's ever been heard. Every other previous release has come from the old stereo album master, and we've got it fully remixed and mastered on ours. So that was a big thrill. And the 007, I can't remember if that was on the scoring masters or not, but it also came from 3-track. And it was, again, just recorded for the album. I guess Barry knew that the 007 theme would be appearing in the film, but he just hadn't maybe written out those sequences yet. I can't speak to that, but that would seem to fit the theory.
Well, to my ear, it sounds like in part of the score, he takes the 007 theme and then reverses it. Specifically, the junk canoe sequence, the foot chase, street chase, I think it's called. It sounds very similar, but as if they did the notes in reverse. I don't know if there's any way to find.
I don't have the music, so I off the top of my head, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay,
Bill, you don't have the new album yet, do you?
It's on its way, but I don't have it yet.
I wish you'd said something. Now, Javi, you have it, and you've listened to it and memorized it, right?
Well, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, okay. And Dave, do you have it?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. Because there's an alternate street chase on there. And
okay.
And it's one of the samples on the website, because I made it a specific thing because I thought it was so cool. It's an early version of Street Chase. And Javi, you must have heard it 17 times by now, right?
Yes.
Okay, see, so I'll let Javi explain it.
It definitely has a I'm not really good at describing music. It has a different.
I'm just putting you on the spot because you probably didn't even notice. So
it definitely stood out to me, and I was like, "This is really exciting."
It's Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. It's the street chase, just like it is in the movie. Only instead of playing 007, it plays Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and it's super exciting. And it's like I'm so happy we were able to include that on here.
I really like the instrumental versions of Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I said that in a recent episode we were doing about Thunderball for the 60th anniversary, and I think it's great. It's and I much prefer it to the actual song, I think.
I like them both. Again, I don't really have a strong preference for either one. But if you like Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, you're really going to like the additional music section on this CD, because I think it has 7 tracks and 4 of them are Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that sounds good to me, yeah.
There you go.
I noticed when I was listening to disc 1, speaking of Kiss Kiss, track 22, Street Chase and Kiss Kiss Club, when it segues from Street Chase to Kiss Kiss Club, like there was something, at least on my copy, where the audio seemed to increase on the second half of the track. Was that something that you noticed in the master, or is that how it always was?
I know that they were separate. They are separate recordings.
Okay,
and they were laid out differently.
It really grabs your attention when it makes that transition. I was reading some Fleming while I was listening to it, and it immediately, turned my head, and I was like, "Whoa!"
I mean, because Street Chase was, the typical 3-track, and I think Kiss Kiss Club was actually only used on 2 tracks. You have to remember something about Thunderball and Secret Service is that these were monophonic films, and that was the final delivery. It was specifically recorded for a monophonic movie. Now, they recorded the 3-track because they could make a stereo album. They could, have a little bit more flexibility when making their final mono mix. But the ultimate delivery, the real goal, was a mono delivery. And so they weren't always, it wasn't necessary to always have a consistent track layout. Things could move around because how are people going to listen to this specific thing, this Kiss Kiss Club? Well, they're going to listen to it monophonically in the film as this woman is dancing, and Bond, goes into the men's room to work on his wound. That's really how it was meant to be heard. So when you put it out on CD, yes, sometimes some little differences can occur. This happened to me on Secret Service, where they would move the flute all over the place, and it was just like, oh my gosh, I addressed it on the album. But again, they were like, well, who cares? Because the movie's going to be mono. It doesn't matter where the flute is on the tape. It doesn't matter because ultimately it's just going to be mono anyway. And the same thing it happened with Thunderball, where it's like, well, so Kiss Kiss Club didn't have to be the same width and layout as the rest, because who cares? It's this little source cue. But for our album, it's like, oh, now we have to make this work in a way it was never really intended to work.
They weren't thinking 60 years ahead.
No, and why should they? They were going to have a 40-minute album. They probably knew which tracks were going to be on the album. They had an idea, and they were to make sure that those were recorded properly. Secret Service, certainly, they must have known some things were going to be for the album and other things weren't, and stuff moves sometimes, if you're really paying attention. I know now people are going to start going, oh my gosh, listen to the flute. I'll be like, oh, I should have kept my mouth shut.
What do you think about Thunderball the film? We recently did a 2-part episode, in fact, about the 60th anniversary of the movie, and you talked about the music earlier, but what's your opinion of the movie itself?
So this is where we're going to get into this is like you're going to, like the analyst chair. You guys are going to be my therapist for a few moments. So, and I think we've talked about this before. Maybe I've talked about it elsewhere. So, my introduction to James Bond was through my father. My father bought Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and Goldfinger on for home video. He read the books. He read the Fleming novels. And my dad was sort of a hardcore purist in that the only good James Bond movies are Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and Goldfinger. He has since come around to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So apart from those 3 movies, and he watched Secret Service with me when I was getting into Bond, and he went, oh, this is a good movie, and now he really likes Secret Service. But Thunderball was like verboten. Not a good movie. Not good. That's how, and I was like, okay. So for me, Thunderball has always been forbidden fruit because, forgive my language, I fucking love Thunderball. And it always feels like I'm sneaking down and watching this movie and enjoying this movie. But the person who introduced me to this doesn't like it. And it's like, but I do. And I love this movie. I think it's as good as the first three. I think Connery is fantastic. He looks great in it. He's still enjoying the role. It's as witty. It's as sharp. It gets bogged down a little bit with the underwater stuff only because the producer said, we spent all this money, put it in the movie. So I was like, what do you do? But I watched it, and I just watched it in 4K, the new disc, with the original mono audio that I prefer. And it worked even better for me than it has in a long time. And I've always loved the movie. I'd go to see it in the theater whenever it would play. I've watched it. I've had multiple laser discs and Blu-rays and DVDs, and it's just like I can't get enough of this movie. And I love the book too. Reread the book while working on the project, and I'm a fan. It's a wonderful motion picture. I know it came out in December of 1965, but when you watch it, it's because so much of it is set in the islands and the beach. It's like the perfect summer movie, and because when you watch it, you can practically smell the ocean air watching this movie. Is how beautifully it's done, and it transports you and it takes you there in a way a lot of movies don't do anymore. This one, the Bonds were sort of travel logs in their era.
Absolutely, yeah.
They took you places, and this one firmly puts you at the beach. And I go to the beach. It's 20 minutes from me now. And what do I hear in my head when I'm at the beach? Thunderball. I go in the water. That's what I hear because this movie just captures it. It's the underwater James Bond movie. It's the beach James Bond movie.
I used to dive a lot, Anil, and sometimes when I was diving, I'd have the underwater the bomb and things like that just going through my head on repeat. It was just so bizarre.
I get pummeled by a wave and it's like da-da.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah. But totally.
I completely agree about it was one of the strengths of Fleming's books and the early films was that they would take you somewhere, and wherever you were taken, it was one of the characters of the film. It wasn't just an exotic location that you were in for 5 minutes and then traveling somewhere else like now. It was somewhere that you actually really felt that you traveled there.
100%. And but even beyond that, which is a big part of the movie for me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I watched it 2 weeks ago, like just after the album came out. I was like, okay, enough. When I was hip deep in Thunderball, I didn't want to watch it again. But I was like, well, the album's out now. I can watch the movie again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I loved it, and I loved Connery's performance. He's really wonderful, and the 4K really brings out the subtleties in his performance. When you watch the scene with Fiona, where she captures him, and he's got this look on his face, you can really read what's going on there. And then also the sorrow when Paula is killed. The sorrow when he's telling Domino about her brother. It's like he's great in this movie. It's one of his best performances as Bond. My father said, he was bored at that point. I don't know. I don't see that at all. Not at all in this movie. He's in great shape. He looks as good as Bond, as he ever did. And also, by the way, Claudine Auger is arguably my favorite Bond actress, probably is. I could go on all day about Thunderball.
What musical ending do you prefer?
Oh, gosh, you want to talk about this? Because this is some real fascinating stuff. Why would you ever end your gigantic, epic-sized James Bond movie with a 3-year-old tracked recording?
Thank you.
Now, having said that, what's correct? Do you know?
Well, I'll tell you.
Okay, let me hear what you have to say. Which is correct?
Well, I can tell you, 1995 at the second and final Eon-sanctioned fan convention.
Man, I would have loved to have gone to that.
They had a presentation, and they talked about the twin things, and the person who was hosting that session said, there's a decision been made. They're going to go with the James Bond theme from this point forward. It may have been done both ways during the release, but now they are saying from now on at home video, we're going with the old James Bond theme recording. And I thought, why are you doing that? I have no idea, but they were using this forum as a way of announcing that from here on forward, we're going to do the James Bond theme. I have a VHS copy with the more nuanced ending.
With the Barry end title, correct?
Yeah.
Which is what's on our CD, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. And DVD is the old James Bond theme.
This is a topic that's fascinated me for years. Now, I grew up primarily with Thunderball on the 1989 widescreen Laserdisc. And that's the track that's imprinted on my brain because I watched it all the time. And that ends with Barry's end title. Da-da-da-da-da-da-dun. Da-da-da-da-da-da-dun. Da-da-da-da-da-dun. Right? Yeah. That's the end title. That's the end title of Thunderball to me. So in 95, when they released them on video again, and then I also had the CAV box set Laserdisc, and it had the Bond theme. They turned it into stereo. They made a new stereo mix, which is very good, by the way. But they made some changes. They got rid of the Pinder line about the manta ray. The most notable thing is the end title, which was suddenly the James Bond theme. And it's like, well, what is this? Why is this here? This doesn't make sense to me. When we know that there's music for this, why is this here? And I still don't know. But here is the strangest part about the whole tale of which is correct. Have any of you seen Thunderball in the theater lately from a 35 millimeter print?
Can't say that I have.
He's nodding no. David, have you?
Not lately.
Not lately.
Not lately.
Bill, you don't have a camera on, but not lately. Well, guess what? I have. Now, the last time I saw one was July 17th, 2019. It was my birthday. Mm-hmm. It was at the New Beverly. Ooh. Luciano Paluzzi was there. It was Quentin Tarantino's IB Tech 35 millimeter print of Thunderball. Mm-hmm. Wow. Do you know how this authentic vintage print ended? With the fucking James Bond theme.
No.
Yes. Every 35 millimeter print I have ever seen, old, vintage, new, who knows when, ends with the James Bond theme. I have never seen a 35 millimeter print, an actual print of the movie, end with the John Barry theme. Mm-hmm. Now, here's where it gets real cool and real interesting, because aren't you glad you asked? So, when MGM provided me with this treasure trove of audio transfers, one of the things provided was the Thunderball DME, which stands for Dialogue, Music, and Effects. It's a 3-track recording with the dialogue on one channel, the music on one channel, and the effects on their own channel. And when you play them all together, you have the mono comp audio for the film, and there it is. Hooray, wonderful. Do you know how the DME from the studio ended? Would you like to know? Do I have you on edge? Do you want to know how the actual... Yeah. Like, here it is. Here is the original DME. Do you want to know how it ends? With the cue John Barry composed for the movie.
Yay.
And I went, holy shit! If they have this... By the way, everyone, please forgive my language. I'm terribly sorry. But really, I went, holy shit! Look, if this is here, why are we suffering with the James Bond theme at the end of Thunderball? It doesn't make any sense, you know?
Well, it's obvious to me that the John Barry thing was what he intended for the movie.
Of course it
because
is.
The music matches up to what's happening on the screen.
It matches
so much
up,
better.
And I have the real and part number from the recording session. Yes, of course, it's what was recorded for the movie. It's what was intended for the movie. But why is every print I've seen with the James Bond theme? Why is this DME suddenly confirming what I've always known, is that this is the end title? Really, I can't look to this day, having worked on it, having received the material, having watched the new 4K, I still don't have an answer for why this was changed. I've seen, well, maybe one was for the British version, one was for the American version. Okay, maybe, but there's no definitive answer. Even now, I cannot give a definitive answer. All I can tell you is the DME provided to me from the studio has what I consider to be the correct end title. There it is, so let it be written.
Well, yep. You made me very happy when I got to track 5 on disc 2 and heard that.
There you go. Oh, by the way, if you want to be even happier, get the new 4K.
Oh, I've already got the box.
Play the alt mono mix.
Yep, that's how we watched
revel in the terrific restoration of the audio that we know and love for Thunderball. And ignore the Atmos, ignore the other track, and just say, yes, finally, we can watch Thunderball with the best picture and the right audio. I'm very passionate about this. Can we talk further about Thunderball audio?
Yeah, we couldn't tell that, you know.
Really? This is like my outlet.
There's one more music thing.
Let's talk about it.
There's a sequence where Bond infiltrates. He knocks the guy out, puts on his wetsuit, and he goes with Largo and his men, and and they go to the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And so in some prints, when Bond is found out, there's basically repeat. I think it's called Chateau Flight, but
That's
from
right.
the pre-title sequence. And then there's other print where there's no music at all. Which.
All right, thank you. This is actually a terrific plug for the album. Thank you for this. So. Yeah, so the mix that I prefer, that was the DME, does not have music in that sequence.
Okay.
The redone mix in the 90s, which I think, again, matches the 35mm prints that I've seen, has the Chateau Flight tracked in. Also, there are some edits. If you listen to that last brass flourish at the end, it's like you can hear it like crossfade.
Yeah.
They had to make something fit that sequence, and you can hear the edit there. However, John Barry did record a cue for that scene, and most of it is not used in the movie. And it's on our album, Disc 1, Track 29, Bond is Discovered. And you're going to hear all sorts of music you've never heard before, because it's not used in the movie. Again, why did they take that cue out? I don't know. Why are some prints silent and some have Chateau Flight? I don't know. Again, it's like the British and American thing, like, on paper sounds like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, of course. But it doesn't, because it's not like it's a regional change. It's not like the James Bond theme's going to play better in this location than in this location. It's not like Philosopher's Stone and Sorcerer's Stone,
Right.
So again, it just doesn't. I cannot figure out why this movie has two different mixes. By the way, I never had a DME from the studio that had the James Bond theme as the end title. Just flat out didn't even have it. Again, can't figure it out. It is an eternal mystery. But can we go further on this? Because there's even more.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, okay. So, as I established in the 90s, and you were there as well, apparently, Bill, MGM made the new stereo track for Thunderball, right? And that's when they added the Bond theme for the end title. So when they did that was around 95 or so, 1995. That's when it debuted on Laserdisc and I guess VHS. And then a few years later, that mix showed up on Laserdisc and DVD in 5.1. So previously it was in Dolby Stereo, or Dolby Surround as they would call it at home, which is a 2-channel format that when properly decoded can give you surround sound. And then a few years later, when they issued it in what was then called AC3, but we now call Dolby Digital. And Dolby Digital is discrete 5.1, 3 channels across the front, left, center, right, stereo surrounds left and right, and then a band with limited subwoofer channel. And Thunderball was available in 5.1, and it was a very good mix. I didn't agree with everything. Obviously, I don't agree with the James Bond end title, the James Bond theme end title. But it was a good mix. It was authentic to the movie. You listen to it and you go, yes, this sounds like Thunderball. Maybe not necessarily the Thunderball that I had on my previous Laserdisc, but it was Thunderball, and it was authentic, and it was done with great taste and great care, and it's very good. And that track was available, again, Laserdisc, DVD. And then in 2006, MGM put out on DVD the Ultimate Editions, where they had the new Kay Lowry scans, the whole new picture restorations that were done from the original negative, and cleaned up and beautiful and terrific. And they said, hey, we got these great pictures. Let's also upgrade the sound for these movies. And they started taking, because the first 9 Bond films, let me think, first 10, is Spy Who Loved Me the 10th Bond film?
Yes.
Okay, so the first 10 Bond films were monophonic. And they said, hey, let's make them 5.1. Let's supercharge the audio for these. And suddenly, Thunderball, this movie that had a very tastefully made 5.1 track in the 90s, I guess they forgot about that. Because they made an all-new 5.1 for Thunderball. And I'll be kind and just say, it's not for me. Suddenly, Largo's super secret door into the Spectre headquarters in Paris makes this ridiculously loud chugging sound as it opens. But even worse than that is they use the wrong music. And this really rubs me the wrong way. So when Bond meets Domino, it's the wrong take. And it sounds nothing like what it's supposed to. And it's like, ew. So if you look at our album, on disc 2, track 7, Bond meets Domino, take 1. Yeah, that's the take from this 5.1 mix. Why did you make a 5.1 mix for a movie that already had a really good 5.1 mix? And not only did it have a really good 5.1 mix, you just screwed up the music. I'm happy to report that they fixed the music on the new Atmos track. I can't claim responsibility, but I let it be known to hopefully the appropriate people that here's the take that should be in that scene. I don't know how far along they were with their project, but I was in communication because they told me Thunderball was being restored, and I went, oh, really? This is a good opportunity to fix some things. By the way, the incorrect music choices seems to be a thing with a lot of the 5.1 remixes. I'm not really that crazy about. That's a little sidebar there. But Thunderball was really apparent because it's like, why did you do this? And what's interesting is when Thunderball came out on Blu-ray, they went back to the old 90s 5.1. I was like, oh, good. At least I can enjoy the movie again. And so it's hard.
Yeah, that's weird how they go from one thing to the other and back again.
It makes very little sense to me as well.
I've got Thunderball on various editions. I had a pre-Lowry DVD of Thunderball, which I know it's got a stereo mix on it, but I've got it on VHS. But one day I'll have to sit down and watch it side by side somehow with all these different versions. But I don't know if I've got a working tape player.
There's that damn full idealistic crusader. Spencer made a 40-minute video all about the Thunderball mixes. It's on YouTube, so if you don't have a working VCR, I think if you can watch that, and you'll be like, oh, okay, these are the differences. Again, I don't think he ever comes to a strong conclusion of this was done for this was done for this. It's just it was just lost to time. Why? How are I never saw the label in the box or anything, so I can't say what it is, but what I was provided matched what I was most familiar with, and believe me, I was stunned, completely stunned. Because I thought for sure, it's like, aha, I'm finally going to get the answer, and I was like, well, no, I don't have an answer. I don't.
I was just going to say, Spencer fights the good fight. I've seen not all of his videos. They can be lengthy, but my hat's off to him for, like I said, he's fighting the good fight when it comes to this.
And he's been a great supporter of the soundtrack albums, which I appreciate. Anything to help get the word out. And then there was something else I was going to mention about the Thunderball, but I can't recall what it was. But I'm sure you have more questions, so. Continue. But thank you for letting me get that all off my chest, because I haven't really said anything about Thunderball publicly, so that was cool.
Something else I learned on the liner notes was that in the haste to get an album out there, they released the stereo and mono editions, which had different versions of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang on it.
Yeah.
Did having 2 sources, did that make things more complicated for getting this done, or did it make it easy because you had more options?
No, I never even paid any attention to it, to be honest. My concern is always what music is in the movie and what music is on the album. Now, in this case, you're right. There were ostensibly 2 albums, a stereo and a mono. Realistically, they should have been identical content. And they were, except for Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. We knew that. So that was established. So all I needed to do then was figure out which takes are in the film, which takes are on the album, make them the best they can be, and I'll sort out this Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So part of the material I got from MGM included the alternate. Believe it, I was completely stunned when this showed up. The alternate instrumental of Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Well, first of all, let's get this out of the way. The alternate instrumental of Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was on the 2003 CD. They got it from John Burlingame's mono LP. That was the source for that track on that CD. And this isn't state secrets or anything like that. Lucas wrote about it in his article about producing the album, in his magazine, Film Score Monthly. So I'm not revealing. They're like, oh my gosh, they pulled a fast one. No, he revealed that. And I didn't have it on my original tapes. But when MGM provided me with the additional material, not only did I have a stereo album master that had that on there in stereo, we had the 3-track recording, which was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the recording. So at that point, I no longer had to worry about the mono version, So at one point, very early in the Thunderball playlist, I had 3 mono cues back to back. It was, alternate Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and then 2 stem cues. Well, we found Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in 3-track stereo, which was like great. And then Chris processed the 2 stem cues so well that you could almost be fooled into thinking it was 3-track original. It's not. It's just straight off the mono stem. And by the way, coincidentally, he did such a good job on Thunderball. I said, well, shoot. Secret Service is just about done, but I have those cues in flat mono. Can you try to make those a little stereo-ish as well? So he did. So that wound up on our Secret Service album. So it all worked out really well. So yeah, I never really worried so much about the mono record or the stereo. I just wanted it to be the best representation of the album, which it is, as far as I'm concerned. I think our album master sounds better than it ever has. It has the album performances and the album edits. And what I mean by that is the bomb on the original soundtrack album is a little bit shorter than what was written for the film. They cut off the ending. Bon Below Disco Volante also is a little bit shorter on the soundtrack album than it is in the film. So we present it as it was heard on the album. And then the real surprise was Cafe Martinique. So Cafe Martinique on the album is take 3. And typically the way Barry worked and the way these bonds worked is you can always, if you pick the last recorded take, of course, that makes the most sense. That's the one they're going to be happy with. They weren't happy with the previous one. They recorded another one. They said, oh, now we're happy. And that's typically how it works. But in the case of Cafe Martinique, I was working on it and I had take 3. And I was like, this just is not matching the movie. I cannot get this to match the movie. What is going on here? It matches the album. The album 100% is take 3. But I just can't get to match the movie. So I was like, let me check. They did 2 other takes. Let's see. Are any of these right? And sure enough, it was take 2 that they used in the movie. So if you look at our album, we have Cafe Martinique take 2. It's a different performance. It's the same music. For whatever reason, sync was better maybe. They thought, yeah, this is better. What I'll reveal here is, and now I'm gonna get into trouble opening my big stupid mouth, but I'll reveal it here anyway. If you listen to Cafe Martinique in the original mono, the orchestra makes a mistake, and it's blatant. And it's in the movie. It's like, oh gosh, there's no way I could put that out on an album. So we fixed it. You're not going to hear the mistake. I know people are going to go, oh, we want what's in the movie. I'm like, you can't. I had it originally, and my mastering engineer, Doug, was like, well, you're going to fix it, aren't you? I was like, yeah, I guess I have to.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because it's like there was a big bit of stage noise, like a clonk. And that should have been my giveaway that this was the right take, because this stage noise is also in the movie. And we also got rid of the stage noise. So we perfected the performance and we got rid of the stage noise. Now I know the internet's going to go like, oh my gosh, this isn't. It is. Trust me, it's fine. It's fine. You don't want to embarrass anybody.
Some
and you
completist out there is shaking.
Yeah, oh yeah,
his
I need the clam. I need the mistake. I need the mistake on my Thunderball album. No, you really, you want, and this goes for anything. You want to put out the best performance. You want to put out the best sound, and sometimes you have to make these decisions to, so you don't embarrass anybody, or pull you out of the album. If you hear, this random mistake, which is, it was blatant. It was so blatant that it was just like, yeah. But it's just so funny because you listen to the movie, you go, oh yeah, there it is. So now I can't say for certain that it wound up on the mono mix. I haven't checked it out that in depth, but if they use a stem, it's going to be there.
God, I'm intrigued by that. I need to go and listen to the version on the film.
It's when Bond is sneaking. It's when Bond is walking back into his room. The harpsichord just completely missed a note. It's supposed to go to da da bam 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 bam, but he just completely flubbed it.
Well, I bet we could go all day, but we are gone almost an hour.
Yeah. What would Spencer do?
Well, he'd go another hour.
Yeah, at a minimum.
Spencer, we love you. Well, again, you're fighting the good fight, in case you're listening to this. Listen, Neil, thanks very much for coming. You've opened my eyes to a bunch of stuff. I kind of knew you would. Well, that too. Listen, thanks again. Best of luck on your future projects. I know you can't talk about specific projects, but I'm sure you've got quite a few. You're quite in demand on these kinds of projects. So best of luck in the future.
I appreciate it. And I really want to thank all of you, three of you, and also anyone listening for letting me have my say with Thunderball. I think it's a terrific movie. Love the music. Can't believe that, this kid from New Jersey who 25 years ago was making his custom mini disc from the original soundtrack album in that 21-minute suite actually now got to produce the actual album with everything on it. And it's just like, it's an actual thing that you can hold in your hand now. And here it is.
That's a jump, isn't it?
It's believe me, no one is more amazed. And I said this on social media on my account. When I got to work on Die Another Day, I was like, great, I did a James Bond. How terrific is that? Now it's like, well, 11 albums later, or however many it is. It's like, okay. I guess this is a thing I do now. So it's very humbling. It's very satisfying. I can't believe it's actually happening. And here they are. I have them sitting on my desk right here. You can't see me motioning to them, but I am. And so it's really a thrill. I love the movies. I love this series. I love this music. And I'm very grateful that this is what I get to do.
No, it's clear your passion really comes through. I think the previous episode that you recorded, which I wasn't on, but I think that is our most popular episode ever.
Look, let me tell you something. Neil Bulk is box office. No, I don't know.
That's right.
Obviously.
I have a very large family that's very proud of me. So.
Okay. Maybe that's what jumped up the ratings. Bulk Clan downloaded the episode.
I got to say, I appreciated you ending the notes with your shout out to Eon and the Broccoli's and noting that the transition from them to MGM and Amazon happened during the production of this. And it felt really bittersweet to feel that end of an era, but in a different fashion.
I don't know if you've looked closely at the album. I take it back. I know you've scrutinized it and studied it within an inch of its life. I know this. If you look at the legal line, which I'm sure is, you always look at the legal line. You got to make sure the legal line's correct. It doesn't say Danjak anymore.
Yes.
This was the first one.
Well, because someone tracked down, there's something called London something LLC has been filing for James Bond.
London Operations LLC.
Yes.
We were instructed to change it. I went, is this the first thing to come out with that on there? That's kind of cool if that's the case. Yeah, it all happened. It's very smooth, the transition. But yeah, that happened.
Right, because the deal was announced in February 20th. The dates burned into my brain. And it closed on March 24th. Okay. So that's right in the middle of your production work.
That's right, yeah. So that's a thing that happened. So.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, what a good way to go out with the definitive Thunderball release.
Or actually a way to come in.
Or that. Yeah.
I guess they went out on Secret Service because that says Dan Javi. So that's a way to go out.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, thanks again, Neil, and thanks, David and Javi, for joining me. And this was a rather intense interview. Enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to getting mine, hopefully in a couple days as we record this. All right. Well, anyway, thanks to our audience for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. The 007 files will return soon. And take care.